So who will we hang out today with? Well, John Owen is CEO of TigerTMS, and a little bit of background to him, and he's now getting nervous wondering what I'm going to say. I've known John since 2008 when I started a new event at Heathrow Airport at the Sofitel, and his company at the time attended with a stand, very kindly, with more telephones on one stand that I've ever seen since. Now, although John has been in hospitality technology for quite some time now, he actually started his life in teaching. And TigerTMS is a company that John actually bought in an MBO from Mitel on the 1st of March last year. What a time to buy a new company, you would think. And he'd been in that business for over a year. Now, for those of you who cannot quite pick an accent, John is actually Welsh, truly Welsh, Welsh-speaking also, and grew up in North Wales, where he's based now. And this also means, therefore, he supports the same national rugby team that I do. Now, the reason we have John here is that in a few previous Hangouts, the term middleware has been mentioned. Michael Levy, back in September, said, and I've been back to check the recording, middleware has set us free, and then your data starts to unlock. So we thought we should have a discussion with someone who knows all about middleware and what it means to our industry. So John, over to you.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you for setting me up with that final statement there. Delighted to see everybody and to be given the opportunity to present the little that I know about middleware to the ensemble here this afternoon. I think it's just to add to Carl's introduction. We as TigerTMS, we're a software company within hospitality, and certainly making various software applications talk to each other is an aspiration that we try to meet across all of our customers. But okay, so I'll share the deck, go through the deck, and obviously welcome questions afterwards. Okay, here we are. Everybody see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty. The catchy title that Carl gave me for this particular session, you can read it there: middleware and how it solves the challenge of integration issues for hospitality. What a mouthful. I prefer to call it middleware for dummies. That's not a reflection on the audience this afternoon. That's more a reflection of the content that is contained within the following slides. So it's a light, non-technical view of how middleware can benefit hotels, and how it can, in the words of Michael Levy, set you free should you wish to move in whatever direction you wish to take. So many definitions of middleware on the internet. The one I chose to take was the one from Wikipedia because I like the last sentence, software glue. That's essentially what middleware is. It basically connects different applications to each other and allowing data to flow between them to sort of, operationally sort of improve the hotel's performance and so forth. But why has it come about? And I suppose it's come about because of the omnipresence, the omnipower, if you like, of the PMS within today's hospitality software architectures. And this is an example. It's an IHG architecture from maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. But as you see there, all roads lead to Rome, the PMS. Everything is connected to the PMS. The PMS is at the center. And middleware has come about because of this. PMSs in their modern format have been around since the sort of the mid-70s, and they've successfully marketed themselves as the most important application that the hotel can buy. Quite rightly, it is the most important application. But does that mean that every other application has to be directly connected and surround the PMS in a hub and spoke architecture, as we see here. So this is another representation of the previous slide. Each of the applications is connected to the PMS via what's called APIs, application programming interfaces. And in a traditional sense, this is an expensive way of delivering functionality, because each of those applications needing to connect to the PMS, there is a charge for that interface, as well as sort of buying the interface itself. But there's also an additional 20% generally software service support charge per annum. It's a very closed environment. It sometimes takes months to develop these interfaces. I was speaking to the Marriott global IT team at a recent high tech, and they told me that it takes 18 months for them to cajole their PMS provider to develop new interfaces for new applications that they want to add to their architecture. So you can see that the tie-in to the PMS is quite strong. And in today's very fast-moving consumer world, taking 18 months to introduce a new application is far too long. For example, if you were wanting to introduce a new messaging app or anything, then by the time you'd implemented and delivered it, then you'd be on version 24 of that particular app when you were installing version 1. We are living in a world which the pace of change is always accelerating, and this closed architecture doesn't support the business needs of the hotel. Just a quick word about APIs, and the best way I can sort of describe APIs again in this sort of light explanation I'm giving this afternoon is that an API is like a waiter. An API takes information from the guests at the table to the kitchen. So it takes their order across to the kitchen. The kitchen satisfies and cooks whatever's been ordered, and the waiter then takes it back to the guests. So that's exactly what an API does. And I thank MuleSoft for this particular illustration. I've got to check them out here, name check them here, because it essentially is describing exactly what an API does. It takes information from one application to the other, and then takes the response back to the originating application. The one and only techie slide, and it's not very techie, is about the evolution of APIs. Way back when TigerTMS started, we used to connect our applications for call accounting and the like directly by serial connection to the PMSs. It was all very much, hardware related serial connections. And the iterations and the evolution has followed that via TCP, then to SOAP, which my joke is it's the cleanest of all the protocols. Following that, the newest protocol is the REST protocol and so forth. Not much difference between SOAP and REST. REST is just a sort of a better way, a more efficient way of programming. I had an example that basically in 10 lines of SOAP, you could probably replicate the same functionality in about 3 lines of REST. They use different messaging formats, but SOAP is still very, very, very popular out there, used in the majority of all installations. REST, though, is the new kid in the block and will become the standard as time goes on. A lot of you may have heard about what's called open APIs, and this is a good one. This is the first PMS Muse to offer an open API. What does open API mean? It basically means that they sort of publish their API and say, if you want to connect to the Muse PMS, this is how you write your code, your side of the interface to write to our interface. So if you're a PBX provider, a TV, HSIA, etc., whatever you are, you can take the elements of their API that is relevant to you, write your interface, and you can have that connection into the Muse PMS. No cost as far as Muse is concerned, but the term open isn't strictly accurate in that it's a proprietary API, as they all are. There's no such thing as a standard API. Muse speaks Muse talk, their language, and anybody who wants to connect into Muse has to adopt their way of coding and programming in order to make that connection. Other APIs, and this is another good example here, are not so open, and they have different interfaces for different elements of functionality. The FIAS protocol used extensively by Opera, amongst others, divides it up into the functional areas, and each interface is separate to the others. We, for example, at Tiger, we conform to the internet, telephony, and TV interfaces into FIAS. We have not developed interfaces for point of sales or key or building management systems, for example. And each of those interfaces is licensed not only for the purchase of the interface, but also for the annual support. So it can be quite costly for a hotel, depending on the number of connections they have into their Opera system. It can get to be quite a costly way of connecting third-party applications. This Opera architecture, if you like, is most reflective of the hub and spoke architecture I presented at the start. So the question is, why middleware? And the best way I can explain this is basically by languages. Some of us speak different languages to the rest of us. I know there are some German speakers on board. I'm a Welsh speaker. I think there was an Australian gentleman at the start. He speaks a different language to us. We all speak a different language. And of course, you know, we need to communicate. And as I said with the Muse API, that's talking Muse language, and an application which could be, you know, a TV system will talk a TV system interface language. And unless one or the other takes the time to learn the other person's language, they will not communicate. They are talking different languages. So what you need is a translator in the middle. And this is what middleware is. Middleware essentially translates, understands the language spoken by the PMS, understands the language spoken by the application, and makes the connection. And this is what Tiger does, for example. We write interfaces to the PMS, we write interfaces into the applications, and by hooking them together, the application can talk to the PMS. The great advantage of this for the application vendors and the PMS vendors as well is that they need to speak to one middleware provider rather than hundreds of different application vendors. Same for application vendors like the TV companies, the TV manufacturers nowadays. They basically have an interface into a middleware company, and the middleware company can then provide them the interface capability into a whole host of different PMSs. This is an example, just a very quick example using our particular middleware. It's called iLink. We work with a TV company called Otrum, a very popular IP TV system across Europe. And essentially, the functionality that is released to Otrum by using iLink are all those things which are listed there to any PMS at all. So this allows Otrum the capability to market their system to a variety of hotels using whatever PMS they have. Middleware speaks many languages at the same time. So middleware can bring together many applications into a single connection into the PMS. So building upon the previous slide where there was one application talking via the middleware to the PMS, here multiple applications can talk to the PMS via different interfaces on the middleware. The PMS only has one interface to the middleware, and then the middleware takes care of the rest, aggregating out all of the interfaces together. So what you end up with is a bit of architectural scalability. Middleware essentially brings together a number of disparate applications talking to the PMS. But remember, you know, this is different from the hub and spoke architecture, because now the PMS is still connected to every single application. Quite rightly, it is still the most important application in the hotel. But it's now a distributed environment whereby one can add and remove applications much quicker than before. But the PMS is still directly connected to each of them in turn. One really sort of beneficial aspect of middleware is to do with the rise of dual flag properties, especially in the US now, but we're seeing some in Europe as well, whereby an operator, I'll pick one, Hyatt was the most recent one I basically came across. They will establish a couple of different brands, or maybe even 3 brands of the same property. And each one of those sub-hotels, if you like, has its own PMS, but they want to share the same central resources like a telephone system, if you like. They don't want to buy 3 different telephone systems or 2 different telephone systems. They can share the resources of one telephone system by creating different numbering plans for each of the properties, well, each of the hotels, sorry, it's one property, but and middleware helps you do that. So in the dual or triple flag properties, middleware certainly saves a significant amount of money for the operator in terms of the resources needed to run those operations. So last slide, quick 20-minute overview. What's the benefit of middleware? Well, certainly freedom of choice. It does allow hotel operators, hoteliers, to choose the best of breed applications for their hotel, securing the knowledge that they will be able to interface back into their PMS of choice. Certainly lowers the cost for those hotels who have got the traditional hub and spoke type architectures, makes change a lot quicker. You know, as I said, the accelerated rate of change nowadays does demand that hoteliers are able to react a lot quicker to consumer requirements. Onboarding time comes down, the architecture becomes agile and flexible, optimizing the business, of course, and ultimately being able to deliver better guest service through the adoption of better applications to serve your guests. Middleware in a nutshell. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Excellent masterclass. For those of you watching, if you'd like to send us a question in the chat or raise your hand and we'll come to you. A couple of questions already come in, John. I've got actually one of my own. If I remember rightly, I think you actually presented in one of the high techs in Amsterdam. Is that architecture or the middleware sometimes called service bus? Is that one of the phrases?
Yeah, it is. I deliberately didn't use the term service bus because it means different people, different things to different people. Right? Because service bus, if you look at what service bus is really all about, it's about sort of distributing computing power in like a microservices architecture. The service bus connects up lots of different sort of distributed computing resources and brings them all together.
Okay, so I get
sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, sorry. Finish.
No, I just said a lot of people have been using service bus within hospitality. I tend to sort of now just talk about middleware and to present middleware as a translator using interfaces on either side to connect to the applications.
Okay, so I guess that begs the next question, which came in. Is all middleware the same? Does it all connect to the same systems in the same way that you described in your diagram earlier?
No, it's not. We at Tiger, we specialize in real-time event management, if you like. Okay, so our middleware is bi-directional. It will take a request, much like the waiter, from one application, deliver it to the other, and take the response. Okay, we are continually ferrying information from one application to another. Totally bi-directional, event-based middleware. Other platforms tend to focus more on the informational aspect of hotel ops. So they would be pulling information from PMSs and so forth and presenting them on dashboards and giving better MIS type info to the hotelier to be able to run their establishments. You know, each one of them are, you know, got merits of their own. We tend to focus on the real-time event middleware.
So is that almost like saying front of house and back of house?
Yeah, a bit like that. Yeah. It's you know, we've not focused anything on sort of the revenue management or the back of house sort of, you know, stats and ops, it's that type of requirements, etc. We are very much front of house, real time, doing it as it happens.
Okay.
You're right. That's a good way of describing it.
Okay. The heritage of interfaces, if I remember back correctly, and there's some people on this call, like Derek Wood, who would remember back as far as I do. The heritage of interfaces goes back 35 or more years when the first interface was created between a switchboard and a computerized PMS, like in the UK, I think Insight was the very first one, which basically meant a telephone operator didn't have to write a note with a telephone call charge in it and rush around to the receptionist who then opened it up and punched it all in. There's a lot of people nodding their heads going, yeah, I remember all that. And so that was the original replacement interface, I think called call accounting or whatever. How far has it all come since then? I mean, how many PMS systems are there, do you think, to interface to, for example, and what are the challenges in today's environment?
Well, I read the other day there's about 4,000 different PMS types in the world. 4,000.
Wow, really?
Whether, you know, I may have to sort of check that number out, but there is a lot, because not a day passes without Tiger getting a request from a particular hotelier who have a particular PMS that we've never even heard of, and they want to connect into a Samsung TV system or something. And of course, Samsung won't be sort of interested in doing any interfacing into that unheard of PMS, because, you know, it's not their business. Their business is to develop Samsung TV systems. So this is where the middleware comes in and gives the hotelier the opportunity to, irrespective of the choice of PMS they have, be able to sort of take a Samsung or whoever's TV system and integrate it with the PMS.
Okay, all right. And I guess that's one of the answers there is when the first interfaces started, there was no TV interfaces, were they? There was a TV at the end and the billing, and there was, you know, I remember, and I do go back this far, to get the TV on, you had to put a coin in the TV, turn the handle, and the TV came on. You know, and there's some people nodding their heads there as well. I mean, I remember being really excited. Wow, I've got a TV in my room and look at that. But now the TVs have got to interface so you can see your bill. To that point, actually, Sam,
I don't remember that far back.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah, well, some of us are older than the rest. One who's a bit younger than some of us. Sam, you've got a point, I think, because you've been involved in operations, Sam, and you've got a question about that. Sam, over to you.
Yeah, the question was, hi John, and great presentation, thank you. The question was, as a hotel operations person in previous iterations, we had a high reliance on PMS and everything connected to the PMS. And so if the PMS went down, everything went down. does middleware tackle that scenario where even if the PMS is down, middleware can still communicate from one system to another, and then if something needs to be communicated to the PMS, it stores that and then transfers it back, sort of thing? Does that tackle that?
It's a cracking question. Yes, in a way, right? What you're doing is setting up your data flows, right? And we live in an industry where the PMS has been at the center of all these data flows for such a long time. The most of the data flows are from application to PMS. But now there are new data flows and new requirements coming out. We are dealing with one at the moment with a TV company who want to display on the TV the temperature in the pool at the particular resort that the TV system is installed at, right? So that will come straight from the IoT type device at the pool and doesn't need to go anywhere near the PMS, straight to the TV system and then distributed out to all the screens in the rooms to show the temperature in the pool. So it all depends where the data flows are coming from, the origin and the sort of the destination and so forth. Doesn't have to all go via the PMS, but the tradition of everything going into and out of the PMS, as per my first sort of architectural slide, is still there. We're still moving towards a distributed type application environment. It takes time.
That's great, thank you.
John, does that mean in the old world, when one of the systems fell down, everything fell down?
Well, in the old world, if your PMS fell down, then your applications that surrounding it would have nobody to talk to. Now you get away from that slightly because of sort of the redundancy of the middleware, and we can offer high availability middleware and so forth from the cloud, etc. That's not a problem at all. But it really does depend on the data flows, as I said. If your data depends on from application A to the PMS is not available, then there you go.
Yeah, such as authorizations and room charges and stuff like that. I think you've scared Julie Grieve completely because she thought there was only 1,200 PMSs.
I'm sorry.
4,000. It's a big number. I didn't think it was that many. Wow. I mean, you're probably right by the time you think of all the small startups and everything. I think the final question which came in is, how do you see, not the final one in case anybody else has got any, how do you see the future development of middleware and hospitality, John? I imagine it starts with the benefits from your last slide stating the obvious, but to some extent, I'm asking you to paint a potential picture of the future and how it may look for, if you like, us as an industry.
It's a bit like I mentioned there to Sam. I think we will continue to move to more distributed type architectures with less reliance on the PMS. The PMS will not be sort of at the center of all things. There are opportunities to offer alternative guest services via middleware. We've been working with the Chinese equivalent of Google, they're called Baidu, about sort of, using their Alexa-like device in the room to be able to order room service, right? So this is done via middleware again. It's the Baidu application via our middleware into the POS system and so forth. So, middleware, it's like, what do you want to do? It's the glue, it's the grease in the machine. It will allow things to talk to each other, and it accelerates change because, without middleware, you'd be waiting on the application vendors themselves to sort of develop the interfaces to the various PMSs and vice versa. We just accelerate things and make things happen. Okay, so it's almost imagine what you can do, and middleware will have a shot at solving that interface, so to speak. It's a translation service. It's not rocket science. Yeah. Paul West, who's one of our regulars. Hello, Paul. You've got a question.
Yeah, how you doing? I too have been around long enough. Excuse me, that I remember having one PC with a digiboard and then like 11 serial connections to the different interfaces to like an HP 9000. I mean, this has come a long way, and it's what you do. In fact, we use your product I do insure guests, so we use that Tiger interface as well, which opens up the door to all the different PMSs. Excuse me. But I see also, I was just, I know you guys also have all these other applications, and with the development now that was necessary, people didn't want, after this pandemic, not touching anything, doing things differently on the phone. Are you finding real kind of movement forward with your phones, the applications on the phones? But the best part is not, what was the biggest complaint? I got to go to this hotel and now I have to download their app. And you've avoided that. And I think that's a fantastic thing. So, I mean, just like a little take on that,
Well,
what you're finding.
Thank you very much, Paul. You couldn't have asked me a better question. It's got to be said. I can now sort of wax lyrical about other new, great, fantastic solution. But this is not supposed to be a sales event. What I think is happening here is basically, as we all know, COVID's accelerated things. People want to use their own device. People do not like downloading software, apps, etc. I was talking to somebody the other day, and he predicted that the PWA technology would overtake the app within about 5 years. Probably right, who knows, but it will happen. People need instantaneous sort of access to information, instantaneous gratification almost, not prepared to wait for an app to download. You don't use your app on the phone after it's 2/3 of the apps on your phones you don't use. We're moving in that direction. But irrespective of that particular solution that we have, and other people are doing lots of sort of solutions via QR codes and so forth, I do think though that the success of a hotel is about moving a lot of different factors, etc. But within the software context, moving data from one part to another to benefit the guest and make the whole experience a lot smoother and more beneficial to them. Providing the people who deal with guests the information about the guest, not just the room number and name of the guest, giving the information that they're holding on the PMS, that they're a VIP and they've visited there 8 times in the past 3 months, and therefore they should be afforded a special service. Bring that data from where it's residing, which is in the PMS system, to give it to the people who actually deal with the guests, the people at the front desk and concierge and the like. So, just moving the data to the right places and so forth, and that's what middleware can do.
Timo, you have your virtual hand up and waving as well.
Thank you, Carl. I hope you can hear me okay. I had some network problems. Is sound quality okay? Oh, good, fine.
Yeah, good.
So apologies if the question has been asked already. So as a hotelier, what's your recommendation, John? Where should we start the process? Because I assume we need to start somewhere, and then we need to start offloading interfaces somewhere. So what is your recommendation where to start if one is serious about considering that kind of technology and implementing it?
Do you mean, sorry, Timo, do you mean middleware now, or which technology are you talking about?
I do mean middleware, yes.
Yeah.
I think where you start, Timo, I think where you start from is what you have at the moment. Okay, what you have at the moment is you will have a PMS, you will have sort of a set of applications, you will have sort of an architecture of your own. Let's understand what that architecture is. See where the quick wins are for any middleware implementation in terms of reducing the cost of your interfaces at the moment, and then gradually evolving to a more distributed type of environment, but addressing the needs that you have as a hotelier in terms of your business aspirations and what you want to deliver to the guests. And that's where sort of middleware can come in by sort of lessening the dependence on the central PMS.
So identify the pain points and then tackle the pain points first.
I'm assuming here that we're not starting from a blank canvas. We have an installed software architecture already. We need to understand what that is, and therefore, which are the quick wins we can sort of establish by maybe consolidating some of the interfaces through some middleware to start off with.
Okay, thank you.
Great. David Pride, our token Australian. David, you've made a point, I think, rather than asked a question. Would you like to make it?
Yeah, sorry, my apologies. I'm multitasking, which is very difficult for a male. No, it was just simply that having used Tiger before and generally middleware was the challenge, particularly for the smaller or the mid-market hotels and the independents, is that they're sweating assets and they're not having got that pipeline of investment to keep refreshing their tech stack. And what it does give us is at least the platform that we can start to introduce the communications that we need to integrate and feed data to our Crichton or our apps or whatever else we've got within the business. Whilst we what we end up with is I still need to get information back to the telephone system. I want to know who's made calls or who wants to do make changes. But I've got a 20-year-old telephone system, which arguably it still works. There's no revenue in phones. Let's keep sweating it until it dies. And it's the same on many other items around the hotels. And some of the things are items that significant investments, things like some of your building management systems. They're not things you refresh every day, but you want to reap the benefits of having that interface. And certainly BMSs are probably one of the worst things to ever talk to PMSs.
So what you're saying, David, is that middleware is like a good family. It can handle the young, the middle-aged, and the old. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. And whilst it has and the big thing at the moment is there's a bigger demand because the guests are expecting everything to start communicating and information to be shared across platforms. And the challenge is for many is either looking at their investment portfolio and then saying, how long before I can refresh technology item, my PMS, my locks, etc. Or do you bring middleware in there and say, look, this now puts me in a position where I can get the benefit, and then out of that will become which ones drive additional revenue, or is this a service thing?
Yeah.
And certainly, in the asset management field, anything that generates revenue always gets money before service.
Yeah. Very good point.
No, that's a very good point.
Yeah, sorry, go on, John.
No, I was just saying it's a very good point. The one about sweating the asset and so forth. I think that's a very fair point. The telephone system, especially in the States, is 20, 25 years old in some of the properties that we look after, and they're sweating those assets to the extreme. But middleware prolongs their life. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Well, I think unless anybody else has got a question, which I can't see over there. Okay. John, thank you very much indeed. Some compliments there in the chat. Hold on a minute. Paul West, do you want to make a point?
No, I was basically, what we're talking about when you have legacy systems and you have certain things, and as John was just saying, that was my joke, is sometimes you say, well, let's see where the people walk. You know how you have an entrance to a building and then people cross over the grass area and they step on the things they're not supposed to be stepping on instead of being on the proper pathway. So by having middleware, you can not only get something executed more quickly and less costly, but you can also sort of flush out what you might need moving forward. And that's why I see it, these are good places, because a lot of the properties still have a lot of old things. We've been talking about telephone systems, the PBXs in general, for instance. Yeah. So, anyway, that was trying to just stick it a little.
We do like an old bit of kit in a hotel, don't we? And I think John's point was, David's point was very, very good in that you can decide where to make the investment, where you get the best return. And I think that's a very good point.